morning, everybody. My name is Bill. Very grateful, recovered alcoholic, and I've been through this process with the help of a couple big book step study sponsors, and I run 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis. And this is okay, this distance? Yeah, okay, it's working good now? Okay, I didn't come here because it was a good idea, you know. It was either AA or amen, you know. It was... I come from a middle-class family, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, dance and lessons, public schools, high school, 2 years of college, and I was a gearhead, I was a hot rodder, just pretty all-American boy, kind of. I didn't know about my family at the time. I remember a neighborhood girl says in my adult life, she said, it looked like a normal house and family on the outside, but we knew there was something wrong with that family. So anyway, Dad was an adult child and his twin brother, they were both rageaholics, and so me and my brother and sister, we grew up with that, and so we all don't know, but adult children know that story. And when you come to like the third step, asking to give up your will, are you kidding me? My will is what kept me alive. That's what kept me going. Now you're asking me to give up my will. So anyway, I just started drinking at the end of high school. Like I said, a couple of years of college. I had to learn, and there was another education that was waiting me besides the academic one, and I went to California, and they had the Vietnam War draft, so I joined up with this outfit that said 104th INF. Now, I had a couple years of business college, so I knew that INF meant information, and I thought I'd be typing up spy messages or something. But INF meant infantry, so you learn how to walk in sand and carry a rifle and that stuff. So in junior high school I'd studied atrocities in the public library, and I knew that the inhumanity of man was only limited by his imagination. Just what kind of a effing world is this? Am I in here? The bomber. I was born just before World War II, and I could tell the bombers by the sounds of the engines, and it was just, even in my more adult life, after I started drinking, what am I doing in this freaking world? This world cannot be lived at all happily. I mean, just read the effing paper, right? I mean, how can you possibly live in this world? That was my thinking, and there's an anesthesia, right? That's available down to your local corner bar, and so I anesthetized myself to the horror that I perceived the world to be, and that was okay, and I surround myself. I started out drinking at the upholstered sewers, and then I graduated down to the, they never even mopped the blood off the floor. You just sort of wore the blood into the broken linoleum. So, but those are kind of they were safe places for me. They were filled with adult children, just trying to survive, and it was like a club. The only people that gave a problem were the Friday night special people and the Saturday night special. I remember a guy pulling on my shoulder, trying to, he wanted to fight me. Can you imagine that? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't fight, but that guy over there does. So I talked my way out of that one. So you learn the rules of the public bar rooms. You learn. If you want to run a tab, sure, no problem, but you got to know the rules, when you cash your check and you pay your tab off, and you better buy a couple of rounds for the boys, otherwise your tab is mysteriously padded, and you learn, the bar I drank with, you had to check your gun with the bartender, you couldn't play pool with a gun, there's some serious card games there, You know what I mean. So, and I was the featured pianist at the Lithuanian Club Pitch League, which is a card night at this Lithuanian club, and I was playing ragtime piano there, and it was a very interesting card game. So, you know, 4 people to a table, but each person at the table was on a different drug, you know. So, so that was it. But I wouldn't be here for all fun, right? So anyway, I made it to 30. I used to, you know, when you drink in a depression, you get a little depressed after a while. And, you know, things were working out for me in life. And so, you know, I started thinking of suicide all the time. You know, that seemed like the only way out. I was a gearhead, like I said. I had gas stations and garages, and next thing you know, I had some missing ears with the IRS and the Department of Revenue, and so, I mean, who wants to contribute to their wars anyway? You know, that was a good justification, and so, you know, you start going underground more and more, and you only come out at night. And, you know, the hippies, they camped out in back of my gas station coming back from Woodstock. So I brought them out a case of beer, and they had a campfire going. And they had they were smoking these red, white, and blue cigarettes, homemade cigarettes, you know. So thank goodness I could cut down my drinking with that stuff. And so I ended up being when I got to AA, I was a walking block of resin, you know, so. And I was drinking, any Ripple people here? Great, huh? That's great stuff, especially when it's come out of your nose, you know? So, anyway, so a couple of people 12-stepped me. This Larry M 12-stepped me. He was a bouncer, and it's a good idea to be on the right side of the bouncers, you know? And he said, I was complaining about some girlfriend or something. I had a nice $17 a week room overlooking a tar paper roof. And nice piece of corrugated over the window, you know. So I'm living with Woodsy the Bookie and Stisher. Stisher didn't make it. Woodsy the Bookie didn't make it either, but Stisher's pancreas kicked out, so he was gone at 41. He was a funny guy, Polish guy, and it was an old house with you remember them China cabinets with the glass doors, and there was nothing in there, so I put paper cups and paper plates in there. But anyway, I'm Larry M. He said maybe you're an alcoholic. Go down and find out if you're alcoholic or not. You know. So I'm driving by at a nice Sideswipe 69 Plymouth, you know, and I'm driving by this church and I see cars out back. So I wouldn't park in the parking lot. So I parked in the next medical building over, and you know how you go into the stealth mode so nobody can see you. So I'm going between the outside wall of the church and the shrubs, trying to look in the window, see what they're doing in there. And there are people sitting in folding chairs, you know, those weirdos sitting in folding chairs. So I didn't go in that night. I was just prepping, you know, but the next week I did. I had done, I think I took the money out that I was supposed to pay the IRS, and I invested in I think £1.50 a pot to go stop drinking with, right? So I go into my first AA meeting, and I got there exactly at, all the meetings were 9 o'clock then, you know. So I went in and tried to be in the stealth mode again and sat in the middle, because I knew the people up front were somebody and the people at the back were somebody, so I tried to blend in, and sure enough, this guy comes over, we've been waiting for you, you know. So, you know, I go, he says, come back next week. Second week I was given a big book, and so I'm reading my big book, you know, in my townhouse. With a black and white TV that gets one station, you know. Anyway, and I'm reading my big book, you know, with one of these. So, you know, you had to You just can't stop drinking. Anybody knows that. So I was doing this wacky week, reading a big book. But you know the nice thing about this book was written for insane people. And it spoke to me. I've heard so many people say the book spoke to them, right? And these are some of the ways we tried to stop drinking. How did they know, you know? And it was written to me. It was written for me. It was written about me, right? Isn't that something? Somebody knew what was going inside me, what was going on. So I read it, and so, you know, I'm still a really sick guy, and all the meetings were smoking then, and I was a non-smoker. I bought a fan for a cellar window, and somebody stole the fan. Oh, I was having a tough time with AA. But you know, some people come up to me and they'd say, keep coming, you know. They give you that handshake, and I was trying to put my hands in my pockets, you know. But, you know, it's infectious. It was the smiles. It was, you know, my mind could hear, my ears could hear, but my mind couldn't hear. My eyes could see, but, you know, I could read the words, but nothing's going upstairs. So they told me to keep coming. Time means things I must earn, things I must experience. So I kept going to these meetings, and I started noticing the steps on the wall. So, yeah, I did that one. Maybe I could make amends, you know. So that didn't work. Making amends too soon doesn't work. So we all know that. So it was. I went through AA. My sponsor was a 12 and 12 man. There was a lot of 12 and 12 stuff going on, and I'm trying to figure out that book, you know. And how do you? No wonder I couldn't figure it out, because it doesn't tell you how to take the steps, you know. It says on page 17 of the 12 and 12, this is only to broaden and deepen our understanding. That this is the basic text of Alcoholics Anonymous, but none of my sponsors were big book people. So I went through AA, and I tried doing the Mrs. Jones list, and I struggled with that. I did the Mrs. Jones list, you know, in a few weeks, and I thought that would give me some relief. But not really. It just took up some spaces in my notebook. And so I think I was 25 over 20 years sober, and a woman had gone to a meeting up in Maine, and it was a woman's Big Book Step Study meeting in Maine. They had one for a little while up there, and she had gone to it, and then she said, actually it was the first Big Book Step Study convention in Framingham. So I went down there to check it out, and I wanted to see what kind of pamphlet they had, you know, to see how they did the steps that way. I'd get the outline, you know, and do it that way, but I'm not seeing any pamphlets, and a bunch of people talking about how great it was. And so I went away from that convention, you know, where's the directions? Where's the directions to this Big Book Step Study? I wasn't that bad, right? So I heard there was a meeting here, so I started, Linda and I started coming down here every week for about 6 years, and of course, a man with 20 years, his turn to speak, he tries to speak, right? After all, I have a lot of things to say. I got shut down, and coming home, it's a wonder the airbags didn't go off. Hitting the dashboard, these effing Nazis, not letting me talk. So, you want to see something? I'll show you something. So I came back the next week, and it was a little less, but then I decided that, you know, I heard the dog whistle. There was something here that I didn't have. And so I started jumping in, and I prayed for a sponsor, and I came down here every week, and some of you, it's great seeing some of you guys again, and wonderful, because this changed my life. It changed my whole different frequency to a whole different frequency with my higher power, a whole depth, completely different depths of meditation, talking about broaden and deepen, right? So my first sponsor didn't work out because I wanted to do my fourth on the computer, and just hit Control V for trust and rely on God, that. So that sponsor didn't work out. I just thought it wasn't a good intellectual match, So. This meeting only takes the tough cases, right? So I got this other guy from Lowell to be my sponsor, and I tried some of my nonsense, and he said, "Bill, you want to do this or not?" And the Class A personality guy, he all of a sudden got humble and teachable, and that was the beginning of my recovery, actually. And I, a guy like me saying, "What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Read the first 63, I look up the words, underline, the deal, and underline what you don't understand." And so I came down here, and it took me. I started my writing, and it took me almost 13 months to do it because I balked during the writing, and somebody says, "Well, you got to call your sponsor." I'm trying to blame my sponsor, It's his fault. I don't understand, I kept calling him about the Mrs. Jones list, So anyway, and then I got to the turnarounds, and then things started to make sense. Where am I restless, irritable at this? Where does it say? The beginning of this chapter talks about these are about to be cast out. So I had, I wasn't that bad, but I had about 350 resentments, and that's really not bad. Any alcoholic I know has at least one resentment a day, right? Times 365, times how old you are, right? So 350 was probably not very good. But, I heard a guy in Norton, he had 1,200 resentments, and a guy from Bangor, he had like 2,400. So actually I felt like I didn't have them. But I remember when I first came down here to Worcester, show him my notebook, and he would notarize it, he'd notarize it with the date. So and I had 10 more resentments on there, and I thought, I never heard of anybody having, doing a fourth step with more than 10 resentments. And my first fourth step, I was still living in that room. It was written in code. The sex stuff was written in code, and there were no locks on the doors anyway. So if anyone found this thing, God, what would they think, So, and I shared it with some religious brother of some kind, and he kept looking at his watch. But I was doing the best I can. That was my first attempt at a fourth step, and I know I would have drank if I hadn't done it. That's where I was at. We're all where we're at, and it says a man's mind must be cleared before he can do this work. And I was a long time. I shook for a long time. I was a mechanic, and I used to hold up a ruler, and if I was shaking more than a half an inch, it wasn't a good day, So now I have anyway. So it was a tough run because I had now the IRS wanted their money, and the Department of Revenue and all these auto parts places. I had a couple of employees. The first people I paid off was my employees, and it was when I crashed. It wasn't a good crash, when you get in the minus zone, that minus zone. See, so anyway, getting back to my recovery, I'm doing this thing with Ray, and he was working 6 days a week, and he did. Anyway, that's step 5. I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself, but so this fear was finding out. The fear was huge. The resentments were relatively easy compared to the fear. There's a fear behind where myself is dishonest, self-seeking, and fearful. The fearful part. I needed another person to help me see the fears. I was like a stunt driver. I didn't have any fears. I'd work with propane gas, gasoline. I was a gas welder. There's no fear here. You had to be, cutting straps off of gasoline tanks with acetylene torch and all that. You couldn't have any fear doing that work. Working with LP gas, you couldn't have fear. You had to be calm. In fact, a little wacky weed would help. You had to be calm to work on this. So, you always tell those guys that weren't calm. They come back with no eyebrows, a bright red face, no hair, They had to be calm like us. But, so the resentments were relatively easy, but the fears were I needed other people to help me see my fears. Fear that I'm not good enough, that was the big one. And our whole planet, not only AA is riddled with it, but our whole planet's riddled with it. We're never good enough. Our conception of God is, pray to something out there, and then, you're praying, but you're still not good enough, So that was my mantra growing up. You're lazy, no good, never amount to nothing, bam, So that was my mantra growing up. You're lazy lummox and all that stuff. So that was burned in my motherboard. So you're growing up with that in your motherboard. So naturally you're not good enough. And like I said, kind of get back to the ACOA stuff. But you're not good enough. So if you're not good enough, and even if you come into AA and you're doing these steps, if you find the fear that you're not good enough, what's the solution to that? Where do you go with you're not good enough? How do you get so you're not good enough? How do you get to be good enough? Never happens, really, because that's still there. But there's another thing. This page 164, there's an invitation on 164 that says, come join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. So there's a sacred invitation there. So we shall be with you. In other words, you'll be protected. We shall be with you. And I think Dr. Jung, in a letter to Bill Wilson, said there's so much evil in the world that a man needs to be with a group to survive the evil in this world. He did that in 1963. I think that was a letter to Bill. So we need to be in a group to survive this thing. How do I get into the fellowship of the Spirit? I take the initiation steps. Hello. So these are the initiation steps into the fellowship of the Spirit. And if I'm fear-ridden, if I have a lot of guilt, if I have a lot of shame, and I'm not good enough, how can I get into the fellowship of the Spirit? This is the way I look at it. This is much different from religions, because a lot of religions want me to worship something. This here wants me to become a child of God. The 7 steps, I now wish that you have all of me, That's a big ramp up. If you become one with God, the Master is alleged to have said, I and the Father are one. If you keep giving yourself to God, you're going to become one with God. And I moved to oneness. I moved into a oneness state. I'm out of polarity. So I'm not duking it out with people anymore. I'm just one with God, and I'm one with nature, and I'm one with you guys. That's a cool place to be. It's a different strata of, I'm out of the severe polarity, duking it out with everybody. I'm up here, and everything is I can observe the polarity, but I don't have to participate. And if I participate, I do a turnaround. What is my fear here? Am I not trusting and relying on God here? Didn't God, for a long time, when I think I came here when I was 60, something like that. So it's, but you come here when you come here. It doesn't matter for what it is. But it changed my life. My fears was I'm not good enough, having expectations of people, fear of people's opinions, big time. But most of them, 90% of my stuff was fear I'm not good enough. And the only solution I found is the meditation. And then the fears go. A lot of people are fearful nowadays. If you're reading mainstream news, there's a lot of action. A lot of action around the world. And and I think our world's going through a wonderful thing now. You know, I've no fear about it. Do I want to put my energy and my attention on the old, dying, corrupt paradigm that's irrelevant to the new emerging world that these 12 steps are bringing to this planet? This planet is these 12 steps are bringing. They say one alcoholic affects 6 people, right? But one sober alcoholic affects a lot more than 6 people. Don't you think so? And we affect a lot more than 6 people, and it's really infectious because people after you do this work, people can see that you're not fearful anymore. I don't think about. Only once in 36 or 30. I think it's 37 years, whatever it is. Only once have I thought that the world would be better off without me. You know, from suicide every single day to once in 36 years. What a change! And I have to keep looking at my fears. The 10 steps saved my butt. I know we're on 4, but that 10th is just a repeat of this. I learned how to do 10 by doing this work, and I have knowledgeable 10-step buddies. Yes, fear is an evil and corroding thread for this guy. In my big book, I have a skull and crossbones by all the death threats in the big book. You know, resentment's is the #1 killer. You know, I got a skull and crossbones. You know, we must be rid of these things or it kills us. There's a lot of these death threats in the big book. But there is a solution here. Is the problem the solution, or is the solution the solution? Hello, this has been my solution, and I'm reading with a couple of guys. You know, not everybody wants to. As soon as you get to step 4, you know, you do a nice step 3, and then you know, they gotta go back to school. I need money. I gotta get a girlfriend. Like this guy started right just recently, and his girlfriend. He got engaged just before he's going to start writing his turnarounds. But you know, I just showed him how to. He's starting to write his first turnarounds this week. I'll stick by people no matter what. You know, I got a guy that's drunk that calls me. You know. So I don't know if I talked enough about the fears, but you know, fear. My life was about fear. I thought I was fearless, but I was riddled with fear. I was just fear I wasn't good enough. This world, there's no way to make it in this world. You know. Even the rich people weren't happy, you know. So, but to me, being in the fellowship of the Spirit, I'm protected. If I'm protected by the fellowship of the Spirit, what have I got to worry about? I never had a desire. I haven't had the desire to drink in 30 some odd years. That's step 10 talks about the miracle. The miracle. That's the miracle that's lifted right out of us. And how can I be fearless? I mean, how can I be happy, joyous, and free? I hated that. Happy, joyous, and free. So the young people used to say that. Happy, joyous, and free. Anyway, you don't know what it's like. So anyway, I get a lot of hits about life today. I live a rich life today, and I'm not BSing you. I live a rich life. It is amazing, and it's a spiritual life. A spiritual life can be a solitary life sometimes, you know. But I'm with people because it's really between my soul and God. Really, that's what it's all about. But then you find out if I follow my mind, if you follow your mind out back to the beginning of your mind, guess where that's going to bring you? It's going to bring you to your source, right? Whatever you want to call it. So there's the way I look at it. There's no way to leave God. I just have to awaken myself to it, and have a conscious contact with it. You know, there's a sage that says, "Oh, the matter worlds, they're so dangerous because there's so many distractions." Right? There's a lot of distractions in this world. But if I can hold on to God's hand, hold on to God's hand no matter what. If you're breaking up with a relationship, if you lose a job, just keep holding on to God's hand in whatever way you do it, you know? So is that we done? Time yet or no? No.
I'm doing good.
Doing good? So I don't know what to say. It's good to see you. Oh, I wanted to say that after coming down here for six years, we started a group in my living room down in Westfield, and 22 people in my little cottage in the living room. It was getting a little crowded in there. People sitting on the piano and on the floor. And then we had a second anniversary down there, and we had 52 people. Some people from Worcester came. Mikey D came down to speak, and people from Connecticut, Meriden. Meriden's a spin-off of this group too. Johnny Notebook started a group down there, and then the West Hartford group spun off of that. The Holyoke group Sunday night spun off of the Westfield group, and then we finally moved to, after we had 54 people at our second anniversary, people were parked all over the neighbors' lawns. The neighbors thought it was cool, you know, and so we decided to move to a church over in Agawam, and so we've been there for 13 years, and so if you ever want to roll in there, you can, and besides, some of you guys come down to speak for us sometimes, and it's quite, and it's funny as a result, a lot of people came to that meeting when we started it, and a lot of people, you know, you can't talk there. But I noticed that after we started that meeting, that a bunch of big book meetings sprung up. The focus started getting back on the big book, even though they were anti-KNS format. They started a big book meeting, so the peripheral, probably not a word like that, but you know, the result of bringing that meeting down there, I thought really had an effect. The solution is the effect, and a lot of different meetings are similar, but they allow them to speak, you know. So, but some of the meetings are pretty good. They honor the not speaking if you haven't been through the process thing. So. I just wish you all well, and this is part of my voyage, and you know, I have to do 10 steps. You know, life happens, and when you get older, and that's a different set of problems. But you know, I'm still the best me I've ever been, and you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm still growing. I still do 10s. I remember saying to some Spanish guys the other day, any police today? And they said no. I said, it's a good day if there's no police, right? You know. So, one quick story. One of the guys that had a spiritual experience with a Spanish guy, he spent most of his life in prison, and so he's working up to the Wilson House. He says, I'm the only Puerto Rican in Vermont, he says. But he's working at the Wilson House. And so he takes a hike up to Bill Wilson's father's quarry, and he gets some of that white marble. And he's in Holyoke, and he's got some of the, he wanted to bring me a piece, he brought me a piece of white marble from Bill Wilson's quarry. He calls it Bill Wilson's quarry. And so he's in Holyoke, and he gets stopped for some minor thing. They always stop Puerto Ricans in Holyoke anyway. And sure enough, they spot these white rocks on his seat. And so the detective cars come, and they got the tester there, right? And he's trying to say, that's from Bill Wilson's quarry, and the cops don't know what he's talking about. So anyway, so they broke the tester on the rocks, and I don't know that. That has nothing to do with fear, but anyway. Maybe it does, you know, but he had no fear about it anyway, and you know, God bless us all. Thank you.